Hello and welcome back to the Embodia Sessions. Today we have the second episode of the second season, and as every episode, it's a very special one, but this time it's with a topic that's very special to me. We're talking about ballet. My special guest today is Emmanuelle, and she's from Australia. She's 22 years old and she started dancing ballet when she was 4. She has been dancing for the Australian Ballet and the West Australian Ballet, which is so impressive. And I'm very, very excited to talk with a professional ballet dancer. She recently quit her career and moved to Berlin. And I'm very excited to talk with her about our experience in this industry and to get the insights of a real life ballerina. Right now, I'm here with Emanuelle, so I'm very happy that you're doing this with me today and that this episode is dedicated to a topic that's also very close to my heart because today we're talking about ballet.
hmm
And yeah, Emanuelle has been a professional dancer, which I find super impressive. And I'm very curious to hear about your experience and about your insights. To kind of like warm up, I always start with a little this or that round. So I'm just gonna ask you some questions and you have one option to choose for the audience to get to know you a bit.
Yes.
First question, classical or contemporary ballet?
Contemporary ballet.
Morning practice or evening performance?
Evening performance.
Point shoes or bare feet?
Mm. Point shoes, I would say.
Which is also, of course, the more difficult choice here. Solo or ensemble?
Solo.
Discipline or freedom?
Definitely freedom.
Simple costume or full on glam?
Probably full on glam.
I agree. Push through or listen to the body?
I would choose listen to the body. Yeah.
That's good. City or countryside?
At the moment, city.
Music or silence?
Music.
Express emotions or contain it?
Express.
And the process or the performance?
The performance.
That's the end of our first section. Now we're gonna go a bit into the deeper questions. I would like to start in the very beginning. So I know that you started ballet when you were 4 years old, and I just want to know how you got into that, like what made you start ballet.
I think I was immersed in a home where there was always music playing, and my dad identified very early on that I was very musical. Like I would always be dancing to like in a very rhythmic way. And so they could see that I had like an ear for it. And then a combination of my grandma influencing the decision of me starting ballet. She had her own school for, I believe, like 20 to 30 years. And so there was never a pressure for me to pursue ballet for that reason, but it was more so, oh, she could be quite suited to this. But I would say it was definitely driven by my love for like expressing and being immersed in music. So yeah, that's how it started. And then I was put into like baby ballet classes. I think it was more of a fun social activity and showing off than like actually appreciating what it was. And then as time progressed, it became like a decision to pursue it. So yeah, that's how it started.
Amazing. Sounds very good. And I feel like it's a very common way, at this young age, you didn't choose it fully yourself, but were guided there. But I like that you stayed there and in the end made the choice to also do it professionally.
Mhm.
Um, for example, from my side, I also started very young. I think I was 6 years old. I danced to 5 times per week at my highest. And I feel like for me, I sacrificed a bit of teenage years for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
How does this look for you? Like, what do you feel like you sacrificed the most?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's very hard to fully make it without sacrifice. And I think for me, by age like 13 is when you have to really make that decision, because that's the time where, as you said, you need to really increase the frequency of training, and because of that demand, you need to, for me at least, I had to miss school, like high school. So I would miss like half days of education to do like hours of training for ballet. I think when you're missing school, it has to be a serious decision of, is
Yeah.
this a profession that I want to pursue? And I would say from 13 onwards is when I made the choice with my parents and with my ballet teachers, and also asking that honest question, is this something that I can actually achieve? Because you do have to be very realistic in that sense. And yeah, we decided that they were going to support me through this journey, and I'm glad that they did. But it's also like it's interesting that at 13, you can have a strong sense of self, but it's very young. Like in hindsight, it's very young to be making such a full-on decision for your future. But I wouldn't change anything either.
I'm happy to hear that. And I feel like it's also very important to have that support behind, as you said, like your teacher as well as your parents decided to support you with that. That's also one of the very big things that go behind, right?
Yes, definitely.
Did you have to sacrifice socially when it comes to friends? Were your friends mainly in the same industry, or how did you keep up with friendships at that age?
I mean, I think like maybe you'll be able to understand this as well. When you're fully like indebted to the art form, there's a certain like understanding that other dancers have that maybe those who aren't in the industry can't quite fully grasp, in the sense that maybe it comes from like a self-awareness, or maybe it comes from like this immense love that you have for it, but you can just relate to other dancers at that age in a much more intimate way than your school peers. I found that I was gravitating more towards my connections with other dancers than my school friends, but that part I did miss with high school, that I was having to sacrifice my time with them to be training more. I guess it's at the time I had such a strong goal and such a strong desire that everything was kind of worth it, and I knew that all my friends were very supportive as well. But yeah, I definitely had to give that part up.
I understand. I can relate to it. For me, it was very similar that I feel like the people I've been talking to during that times the most, or I feel connected to the most, just were the people that went into a similar direction or set their goals and priorities similar. You were dancing for the Australian Ballet as well as the West Australian Ballet, which I find so impressive. I've always stayed, at the hobby level of dancing, even though I was doing it quite frequent and like dedicated my whole free time to it. I feel like that's a whole other step. And when I heard about this, I kind of like imagined it to shows like dance academy or in this kind of world. So I'm very curious, what is it like to be inside of an institution like that? How was it like? How did your day
Mm-hmm.
look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I went to the Australian Ballet School first, which I had to leave high school altogether by 15, I think. And I went to train at this like elite institution in Melbourne. And, it began at what was called level 5, and you graduated by level 8. That was 6 days a week of full-time training. And I would say for holidays, we had like similar to a normal school, like 2 weeks per term of time off. But I'd never experienced, like, I was doing lots of hours for as long as I can remember, but I've never experienced like something like that. It's rigorous. It's very demanding, and you really have to love it to be doing it. For my last year of training, like my graduate year, we danced with the Australian Ballet and we went on a tour all through Australia, like a regional tour, performing with company members. That was my first insight into what like your professional life looks like as a dancer, because when I was at the Australian Ballet School, it was purely this very like meticulous way and consistent training, and you know what's expected of you is very clear, and it's very methodical. And experiencing this lifestyle of being a professional was like, it was very rewarding and very eye-opening. And because I feel like as an audience member, you can imagine what a professional ballet dancer's life looks like, but you can't actually, you can envision it, but to be experiencing it is something completely different. Then a few dancers from the school, we were invited to perform Romeo and Juliet with the Australian Ballet, and experiencing that was just like, yeah, that was magical. That to have that experience, it was like very affirming to know that this is really what I want to do. Performing with the West Australian Ballet, that was a very fulfilling experience for me. Everyone's professional career can look different, and for me it was just better than I could have imagined. Like that first year of me performing with the company, it's very different to training. I think like being a professional, you're given a lot of trust to kind of lead as an artist the way that you want to, whereas in school you're kind of obviously just told how to perform or what to work on. And having that trust was actually what I loved about being an artist, because then you can be intuitive and work on what you feel needs to be improved. And I love performing too, so I was performing more frequently obviously as an artist.
Sounds so interesting. Like this sounds kind of like the dream that I always had while going to dance classes and while practicing for it, but I feel like you actually lived it. Very impressive. What my next question would be, it's more about the teachers, because I feel like that what people usually get from maybe watching ballet movies or documentaries is that the teachers are this like super strict people who almost don't show any humanity. How was your relationship with your teachers?
And that's a good question, because I've experienced it all, I think. Being such a demanding and precise and refined art form, you're going to need a certain strictness or discipline that's really instilled from your teachers. And so I think I've had some very strict teachers. I think experiences that have really allowed me to develop my resilience, and knowing what to really take and listen to and what to just kind of process and just let it go. But I've also had some of the most special relationships with teachers through my training in my latter years, who have treated me like an artist, not just a student. Those teachers have also had a career themselves, so they really understand like the sensitivities and the thought processes and what really can speak to you as a person. Because another thing is, a lot of us are perfectionists, so we have already like a very strong inner critic, and you know it's very rare that you'll have a day as a ballerina of not thinking of what needs to be improved, focusing more on what went wrong rather than what you're doing well at. I think when you have a teacher amplifying that in a toxic way, it's not really conducive to your improvement. I think being at the Australian Ballet School, they had teachers there, because you have one teacher per year, who really spoke to me, and I connected more with some than others, but I was fortunate to not be deterred from the art form from one bad teacher. You know, I had some good experiences, but I think you can find that out there. Like there's a reason why movies and TV shows do depict that, because it is there. That's the kind of reality of it.
Thank you for the insight. You said earlier on that you just love performing, and I'm curious what exactly it is about performing that you love. What does it do with you mentally, or what does it give you? Is it the motivation or the reward for the hard training, or maybe something very different? Why do you love performing so much?
I think, like, for me as a dancer, my technique was never the strongest in the class. Artistry and like expressing myself, that was my strongest thing. And the presence that you feel when you're on stage is like unmatched when you're performing. Like this, such a strong sense of this is completely me being honest and authentic with expressing everything and feeling the music. And it's a very vulnerable place to put yourself in front of so many people. You're forced to be present, and I love that. You know, I think like giving myself to an audience was just like one of my favorite things. That's one thing now that I've stopped. That's one thing that I miss. But obviously, there's nothing more fulfilling than when you're working really hard towards something and training and you're able to perfect it like that. That is great. But performing, I think you can't mimic that in any other sense. So that's what I really loved about it.
That's very beautiful. Actually, you know that my whole Embodia Sessions podcast, the whole idea in general about Embodia Studios is about reaching a present state, because so many people, they tend to be everywhere with their thoughts in the future, in the past, like, but never in the present moment. So little people actually take that time during the day to, like focus on just being in the moment. And I love that you have that feeling while performing. By that, you really see that there was a passion of you or something you were meant to do, right?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
You were also telling me in your introduction that ballet taught you a lot of self-awareness. I would like to know from you if it was mostly physical or emotional awareness or both. Like, exactly did it teach you?
That's a really good question because I think you develop this like innate self-awareness because when you're in the physical practice of doing ballet, you need to be like in touch with your muscle like activation. Everything needs to be a thought process, and it's your body is your instrument. So you need awareness of that. I think it's been a really positive experience in the sense that I know my body so well and I know my mind so well, because there's been like when you're training 6 days a week, there's going to be times where you're not mentally fit or you're having a bad day. And so having this self-awareness, you need a lot of strength and knowing how much to listen to your mind and just focus on your body. And, certain practices, I've carried that with me. But I think the negative side of it is definitely being too aware. Maybe not even being present sometimes in training. I think like worrying about certain things or not just letting a moment be what it needs to be or things like that. There is this awareness of my body and everything that I'm very grateful for. Yeah.
As you should. Yeah, it's great of that self-awareness. I also feel like it's something that many people are lacking, like to be aware of themselves, to really know themselves. And I really can understand that training at that level, the self-awareness tends to already go into, the direction of too much awareness. I feel like that you've experienced that and that you can take that throughout your whole life. I think it's amazing to have that self-awareness. It's very known, but like ballet is super hard on the body. Like the training, the flexibility, everything was very hard on your body. And how did you experience that? What was your relationship like with your body throughout the years? How did your body support this journey for you?
Yeah, I think like this was a very interesting one because I obviously I was equipped with self-awareness, but this was one thing where I think stepping away from ballet, it has been something that I've received a lot of clarity on, of just how little I actually listen to my body, because I think there is such a strong emphasis on pushing through and just getting on with it and, being a perfect dancer, I think like I was injured a fair amount in my kind of last years of training and as a professional. And I had stress fractures in my second metatarsal, which is your second bone in your foot. I think what kind of encapsulates that is each time I broke my foot, I was dancing on it for maybe 2 weeks before we knew that it was actually broken. I think like I knew deep down that something wasn't quite right, because you know when something's not quite right, but this expectation of you as an artist to show up and to be reliable and to be perfect is so present that it was kind of like suppressing my confidence to speak up about it. And I don't think that's healthy at all. And I think like I've seen a lot of people experience that. This is the kind of downside to it, and something that I'm kind of glad that I've stepped away from, is that there is this like dread of speaking out about an injury, because you know that you're going to lose opportunities, or that you're not perceived as a reliable artist. But it shouldn't be like this at all. I think like, you know, injuries are going to happen. You're human before you're a dancer. So I think like that was maybe with more maturity and more years of being a professional, I would have learnt how to communicate that better. But I think like at the time I did struggle with that. And maybe that was also tied to my perfectionism. Listening to your body and like being able to then take action in a way that was intuitive. It was quite challenging. You know, when you're in like an elite institution training 6 days a week and you all want the same thing, you know, and there's very little contracts or very little job opportunities that come out of ballet. That's one thing that was quite hard. And so because of that, I did feel a lot of frustration towards my body. I'm naturally very hypermobile and my bones aren't very strong. I felt that like frustration towards my body, that it wasn't strong enough to take the load of certain times. But that was one thing that was definitely quite hard. And I found that gratitude and this like presence and this appreciation for my body now that I never had when I was dancing. So I think it can be different for everyone, but that was just like, that was my experience. So, yeah.
Wow, that sounds very hard and very intense. I'm very happy to that you came to realize that, and that you see it how you see it right now. I feel like that's a very good outcome out of it. And as you said, seeing your body like this or being so hard on yourself and all the frustration, very much not sustainable, you know. So
Yes, yes.
it's very important that you came to realize that. But I can also imagine, I cannot imagine it because I haven't been there, but like I can see the strength that it has to take to actually be honest with yourself instead of just keep pushing, because you're in this world where there's not much room for you taking a step back or looking out for yourself, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
It must be hard, I can imagine. But yeah, let's switch again more to the positive sides about it. You told me that ballet taught you about expression. I think it's very reasonable because it's a form of art. I always saw ballet as an expression of things that I couldn't say because I used to be a very introverted person. I always used to be not the one that would talk out up or like talk about my feelings. I felt like in dancing I could let it out. I'm curious about what you expressed with dancing.
Um, I think you're definitely right in that you're able to reach this like practice of expressing in a way that words can't match. I felt such like a sensitivity or pure joy or just pure happiness or pure gratitude that I was able to reach this like state. I think like when I was doing like strictly classical ballet productions, I felt this like confidence and this like certain feeling that I couldn't replicate in any other ways of expression. And then my very first performance with the West Australian Ballet, I was selected to do a pas de deux, which is like a dance of two people, with this older artist, and she, the choreographer, her name was Alice Top. She created this pas de deux on us, and it was like there was a certain story behind it, and I had actually never had the privilege of being able to put my own life experiences and feelings into, it was contemporary ballet, and I think it could be fully mine. Like it could be fully my interpretation. And that was like one of the most like fulfilling experiences of my life, being able to like be so vulnerable, and no one knew what I was thinking about, or no one knew what I was kind of reliving through that pas de deux. But that was when I felt like, oh, okay, this is like what artistry really feels like, and that was something very special for me. Even like it allowed me to process some of my life experiences, or but yeah, that was very special.
Very beautiful again. Such a great experience for you, not just as a dancer, but also for what's inside of you. I love how ballet just opens the world to express.
I think also you don't always need to be a professional to be able to access that. I think like
Mhm.
it it does give you tools to be able to express and experience that feeling, which is very special.
I agree. Now that you stopped dancing ballet, which you said was a decision, right? It was not kind of like you were forced or something, you decided it by your own, right? What did the first weeks or days after that decision feel like for you? Because it was the main thing in your life. What did this weeks after look like for you?
The story behind that was my director from the West Australian Ballet was leaving, and I had developed a very, very close connection with him and his wife, who was a ballet mistress. I was always planning on dancing in Europe. That was my dream, because I found that Europe has such a strong appreciation for the arts that maybe Australia doesn't have, to be completely honest. And I loved the European repertoire and choreographers and the art that they were creating. I really wanted to experience that. And so finding out that they were leaving, I had the option to stay in that company in Australia, but I decided that I wanted to go on a tour around Europe, an audition tour, and take classes with companies across. There were also, to be completely honest, some realities about being a professional that weren't really resonating with me, or at least I know myself very well, and I knew that it could be possible that I would develop a bitterness towards the art form, mainly with injury and sacrifices. For me, I wanted some exposure on what the industry was really like, if it was specific to just Australian companies, because I'd only ever danced in Australian companies, or if it was different in Europe. And so I went on a European tour, and I took classes with some of the top companies in Europe, and it was like halfway through my tour that I decided that I wanted freedom, and I think that life has so much to offer. I wasn't ready to give up my life for ballet, because I felt that through my professional and also my training, I was genuinely fortunate with the performance opportunities that I was given. I was very lucky, and I felt that I kind of wanted to keep my love and experience of ballet, quite sacred, and I didn't want it to end on an injury, or I didn't want it to end when I didn't love how my body was cooperating with it. Or a lot of people didn't understand that, but when I told my parents, they were sad obviously, but they were incredibly supportive, and just that life has so much to give you, and you only really have one existence. If you want to get more out of life, you can get more out of life. I had achieved it, and I had made it. So it was a decision that I'd really, really made with a lot of consideration. I'd travelled and to make that decision. My days and weeks after were It's a different kind of, you're adapting to a different way of life, and your routine is out the window, and you don't have like consistent goals that you're kind of moving towards. You're just like forced to be present and forced to be, you know, a human. And I think like it was needed for me, and I've like really developed this daily gratitude that I never really had before, and this freedom to experience my existence how I want to. And it was hard at first, like to not have a routine and to not have, you know, structure, I guess. But I haven't looked back and I haven't regretted this decision at all. It's really been the right choice for me for what I want out of life.
And that's all what matters, right? I think it's a very beautiful journey that you came to realize, and that you stopped at a point where you said, like, I want to keep this thing that I love so much and I have so much passion for as something that I remember as great. Because I feel like for so many people, it actually ends at a point where their body cannot anymore, or with a very bad injury, and they just forced to step back. So I feel like you really made the right decision to keep this as something that is still very close to your heart, and that you don't put any bad thoughts onto. I find that super mature, like very impressive.
Thank you.
When you stopped, you probably had to reshape what your day looks like, what you now put all your effort and time in. Did you have issues with that because you felt like ballet became already your personality? Did you have issues finding other interests, or experiencing who you are besides a dancer, or did it come easy?
I think this is what made my decision easy, because obviously it was everything to me and such a big part of my life, especially when you have like one day off. It's your whole life. But I think like I have always had a strong sense of who I am and my identity, and I've always had other interests. It's been really important to me to have a life outside of ballet. I found that my identity and love for other things, it was even hard at times going through the school, because I could see I enjoy this or I enjoy that. Like maybe I could even pursue this at one point, but I knew I needed to just focus on ballet. I stepped away from it or made the decision. I already had other things in mind of what I wanted, and I want to study fashion design. I'm obviously always going to be interested in the arts and things that are creative. It was part of me before, but it really came to the forefront when I quit. The only thing that I really struggled with was you get so much validation when you're a dancer, and sometimes you can even work on things like just for validation. For the first few weeks or even months, it was like, so you do rely on external validation. That's just part of the art form. It was very much like there's no one telling me what I'm doing well, or no one telling me what to work on or improve. And then it became like quite peaceful after, just like I'm gonna like achieve things for me. I don't need to rely on like external validation to know that I'm doing well. It's been like something that I've been developing, and now looking back, it's interesting to see the complete difference in my mindsets. So that was one big thing. It's been a healthy journey for me of processing that.
Very happy to hear. And I feel like that you mentioned now you're gonna pursue your career in fashion design, right? It's another beautiful direction, which also showcased your creative side. It's just another area of expression, I would say. I wish you, of course, all the best luck for that. It sounds like a very good journey. It's impressive because you're so young. You're still 22, and it's kind of like you already lived a whole life, right? Now you get to choose a second direction. Most people your age, they are in the same stage, but they haven't had this full other life. I find this very beautiful to see that, in your life you get to experience so many different areas.
Oh, definitely. I think that's exactly what my dad was saying as soon as I called him to tell him. He said, you can choose as much as you want, like out of life. I'm very fortunate to be experiencing that right now. But it is true that I've kind of had this whole other life by 22.
That's so cool, actually. And from all the experience you've gained and what you came to realize by being a professional dancer and everything it has taught you to girls who are about to start off a similar career, they want to also devote their life to something that is very intense, ballet, or can also be something else. Do you have any advice to that? How they will have a similar good experience and stay away from the more toxic part of it?
Yeah, I think I can speak for like ballet and this industry, knowing that there is like no like right career to have. Like there's such a strong discussion around like, you know, getting into like one of the top companies in the world to then be a principal ballet dancer. Like that's a dream and a goal, but I think knowing that you're doing this because you love it and you're reaching this fulfillment that you can't really get from many other industries, you need to lead the career that feels right and feels intuitive, because there's a lot of people telling you what steps to take. Even for me, when I decided to leave the West Australian Ballet, there were people questioning it or telling me to like take a safer route, or, you know, just something that was not in line with my goals. You need to remain intuitive and remain in touch with what you really want out of it, because I think it's very easy to be put into a box within this industry of just like what you should do and how you should be as an artist. But there's so much freedom and there's so many changes that you can make. The best part about being an artist is to develop yourself. And you can only really develop yourself if you're taking steps that feel natural to you. That's one thing, to just like really listen to yourself, and that you can step away from it at any time. You're not indebted to the art form just because you've done it since you were 3 or 4 or 6 years old. I think that's what I would say. Or I would have wanted to hear that you have freedom with your choices of this career.
That sounds like a very healthy advice. I feel like it's something that girls at an age of like early teenage years, or even maybe still children that are going to pursue a similar career, should listen to. Very beautiful. I know that you're living in Berlin right now. How do you find life, first of all, in Germany, in Berlin? What are you working towards? To what are your goals these days? How does your day look like? How is life at the moment?
um it's really beautiful. I think like am I'm really happy and very grateful each day to be experiencing like a complete change in my lifestyle. I'm working over here just doing like a stepping stone job, but I have the energy and the ability to really invest in things that make me happy. And so I have like a beautiful community of friends here. They're connections that I never really thought I could have. And it's nice to be in a place where like Berlin, I feel, really celebrates one's ability to lead the life that they want at the pace that they want. And that's very different to Australia. I think in Australia, there's such a strong expectation on getting a degree, getting a full-time job, and buying a home. And here, it's really beautiful to see that everyone is living completely different lives and has different stories. I'm really inspired by the arts here and the creativity and the self-expression. I'm constantly gathering like inspiration for what I see in my future. I'm planning to do a language course so I can speak German fluently, and then starting a degree in fashion design. I'm currently building my portfolio and sewing and designing. We'll see what that looks like in the next few years.
Beautiful. Well, that sounds very, very inspiring to me overall. And I wish you really the best of luck. I'm also very happy to hear that you're happy and that where you are right now, it's really, I feel like where you're meant to be, because, if it just feels right and if you just feel this freedom, this joy in what you're doing, it sounds to me like your journey was how it was meant to be, and you went in the right way, you made the right decisions. This is also a great example of what listening to yourself actually means. It takes you where you should be at the time when it's supposed to be, right? Very good example of that. I'm very grateful for you to be part of this podcast, that you shared your story and the insights. That was also just a very nice episode for myself, coming from a ballet background. I wish you all the best for your journey and for what's about to come. And I'm sure you're gonna do great, because if you put all the love and motivation into it as you are talking about it, you're gonna find your way and you're gonna do great.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure.